Hello there, welcome back to the channel. This is Netherworld Empire. Today we're going to cover a subject that comes up periodically among Star Trek fans and has had to be creatively explained from time to time in the canon, of which there are multiple explanations. And I'm going to cover this as two parts, not as in two videos, but two sort of explanations of two different things that happen, which kind of cover the same thing. And that is, why do so many races in Star Trek kind of look the same, or at least very similar? And there are actually multiple reasons for that. Before we get started though, please like, share, subscribe and comment down below on your opinions on this or any thoughts or theories. And there may be a couple I missed because Star Trek has made multiple attempts over the years to explain away the reason why so many alien races are humanoid and non-humanoid species or more ethereal races are less common, or at least less interacted with. And before anyone says it, of course the reason for that is budget. But that's a real world explanation. Let's go in universe. The first and most reasonable explanation is that life is not static in the universe. For various different reasons, by various different species, different races have been moved about. Now, when we're talking races, we're not talking subtle differences of the same species. Humans, for example, establish multiple colonies. You could make arguments that over time, these colonies could be considered different races. But that's not the case. That's more a cultural difference, such as when races like an alien species simply known as the Preservers removed humans from Earth to transplant different cultures from Earth that they believed were in danger of extinction. If not the entire race in danger of extinction, they would simply move it to another world to kind of explain away its existence. This also explains why a question was made when there were no whales on Earth and a cetacean probe came looking for them. It's like, does the species exist on any other planet? Because someone might have simply moved the damn thing. It might not have been indigenous to Earth in the first place, or someone may have simply transplanted them for whatever reasons, livestock, pets, anything, to another planet. Of course, that had not happened in the case of humpback whales, but all the same, it was a reasonable question. Multiple different alien species have done this, but the most common explanation for why a lot of races are genetically similar, which is that they are humanoid, and the fact that they can interbreed. You look at it from this point of view. As a species that evolved on Earth, we can't interbreed with other species on this planet. You can't have a baby with a crocodile, for example, and create killer croc. That's not how it works. Now, we are related, albeit very distantly, to a crocodile. I mean, it's extremely distantly. To find a common ancestor between us, you very likely have to go back hundreds of millions of years. But we are related. Now, transplant that same way of thinking to a Klingon. How far back in evolution do you have to be related to a species that evolved on not only another planet, but another planetary system, and not even a neighbouring planetary system? The fact remains very far, as in infinitely far, because in theory we shouldn't be related at all. So why then can we interbreed? Now, we could interbreed with Neanderthals because we were relatively closely related, so this implies that humans and Klingons are distantly related. Now, we know that many humanoid species share a common ancestor, as about several billion years ago, what is considered to perhaps have been the first humanoid species evolved in the galaxy. Journeying beyond their homeworld and across the stars, they found very few, if any, species that were like themselves. And feeling entitled and arrogant, like many humanoid species, they thought that they didn't want to see gross bug-looking creatures with 6 legs and 7 eyes saying hello. They want to see nice smiling humanoid faces with opposable thumbs and 4 fingers and bipedal. So they seeded their genetic material across the stars. Some have even speculated that this race may have gone on to have evolved into the Founders, but that's another video. Now, exactly how many species this resulted in the evolution of is unknown, but certainly humans, Cardassians, Klingons and Vulcans were amongst the races that were created as a result of this. But in a more modern galaxy, there are millions of humanoid species scattered across the galaxy at various levels of technological development, some of them ancient and powerful, millions of years old, and others relatively young, like humans, just spacefaring for just a few hundred years, or the society and history that only goes back a few thousand years. So there is differences. So then we get to the next stage. As I said, you had races like the Preservers decided to move species around the galaxy. This resulted in sort of offshoots of different species that were sort of related, which may explain the relationship between the Ferengi and the Docterians, as an example. Another good example would be the space elves known as the Vulcans. They've gone on to seed multiple civilizations, the Romulans, the Reman, the De Bruin, and we also hear about the Mintalkans. Now the Mintalkans are described as a proto-Vulcan culture. This to me implies that they're not actually biologically related, but they do look similar. They look kind of like a Romulan. So if they are related, it may be that they too are descendants of a group of Vulcans that found their way to that planet, or maybe some of their ancestors were transplanted from Vulcan or somewhere else and became them in one form or another. That's also a possibility. Many species across the galaxy are actually distantly related to one another. It is entirely plausible that actually Bajorans and Cardassians are related. And another YouTuber did a much better video on this called Lore Reloaded, where he covers a theory as to how they could potentially be related, which is fairly convincing. I won't remember to link it, but go check out his channel, it's on there somewhere. There are multiple species, as I said, that are definitely related. Now this doesn't include races like the Borg, who technically are made up of multiple different cultures and civilizations, but there are individual species that for one reason or another, either through genetic engineering, as in someone engineered a related species using their DNA, they are so old that they have diversified through their colonization programs like the Vulcans and Romulans that they have become separate species, or selective breeding or whatever. It's also possible that the two races evolved on the same homeworld. A good example of this are the humans and the Voth, two species that technically evolved on the same planet. And yes, unusually for science fiction, humans have a distantly related species in the Milky Way galaxy known as the Voth, who are a repto-humanoid species that descended potentially from the Hadrosaur, it is said. But they may have certainly they did evolve from some form of dinosaur form millions of years ago, but no trace of them remains on Earth as their society is so old that they long abandoned living on the planet. These are as yet the only known species to have also evolved on Earth proper and have gone on to become another sentient species that humanity would one day encounter. But other races have also encountered this. Now, another reason that species can possibly look the same is convergent evolution. The humanoid form is a good form for species evolution. Certain adaptations are useful. The opposable thumb, as a good example, is a good, advantageous adaptation for most species. Reinforced skulls, which would involve cranial ridges in different forms like Klingons and Kazon, could also be for races that have evolved in harsher environments, also seemingly be an evolutionary advantage to a species. And this goes on and on and on, with different species having different adaptations that seem to reoccur throughout time. Ears, for example, most species have ears in one form or another that stick out from the sides of their head. Not all of them, the Jem'Hadar don't, for example, but some and most do. And they're generally quite similar. A human and a Vulcan ear, although a pointy ear is distinctly different from a human, the basic form is still the same. It's still roughly the same size and serves the same function. It's just taken on a slightly different form. So, to conclude, the main reasons are different humanoid species being seeded across the galaxy either through their own means or through a third party removing them and transplanting them to other worlds, resulting in the evolution of new cultures and eventually new species that may or may not still resemble one another, such as, again, Vulcans and Romulans. And another way would be the fact that many species share a common ancestor billions of years ago, seeded their DNA and caused the evolution of their species on their respective planets. Other forms include genetic engineering to create them, and others are simply, as I said, convergent evolution. It's a bloody coincidence. And as I said, this has resulted in many species, probably through the form of convergent evolution or possibly being distantly genetically related, causing certain traits to reoccur, such as, again, a good example being the Kazon and the Klingons, who do look strikingly similar. But also humans and Elorians look pretty much identical, so do Betazoids, so do Leonandans. It just keeps going. There are multiple species that look completely identical. It's easy to conclude that the human form is the most basic and therefore the most common, and it's usually quite hard to tell, say, an Elorian from a human because they will be very easily passable. They can speak the language, talk the talk and walk the walk, although there are still differences they're all internal. External differences become sometimes more subtle and easier to hide. Spots on a Trill, for example, can simply be removed. Pointed ears on a Vulcan, pointed eyebrows can either be masked or surgically corrected to look human. Or you can simply have implants to give you cranial ridges, or even genetic resequencing to give you those appearances for more advanced cultures. But the point is, most races can look kinda similar. And the reasons for that vary, and I'm sure there are many more, which please let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. I just want to take this moment to thank you for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, please check out my social links in the description box below to Instagram and Twitter and others, and also is down there a link to my Patreon page where you can support this channel and the others as I try to grow this franchise and do this more regularly. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and bye bye.